The Hills to Levels Multiple Benefit project was started in 2016. The project was set up to target catchments where they were failing under the Water Framework Directive, and NFM interventions would help deliver multiple benefits. Natural flood management measures were targeted to not only reduce flood risk but also to deliver against Water Framework Directive targets such as reducing diffuse pollution and improving habitat and improving the ecology of the river. There were 5 main aims of the project. Number 1 was to identify catchment issues, and we did this by doing extensive walkover surveys and engaging with landowners and stakeholders within the catchments. The second aim of the project was to engage with farmers, stakeholders and communities. Number 3 was to deliver the NFM interventions in the catchments agreed with local farmers and communities. Number 4 was to undertake extensive monitoring to understand the benefits of the project and whether we managed to reduce flood risk and achieve our Water Framework Directive targets. And the final aim was to share the knowledge that we had gained through the project, through the monitoring and all of the work that we had done throughout the life of the project. 5 catchments were selected within Somerset. They were chosen because they were known to be failing to meet Water Framework Directive targets and had high potential to deliver NFM interventions across the different catchments. So these catchments were the Washford River and Traphole Stream, the Back Stream, the Holswater, the Peverton Stream and the Merriott Stream.
This is a project about the impact we want to have on the wider catchment. And so it's essential to engage with the people who own and manage that wider catchment area. So some of the way we engaged with landowners was sometimes we had some contacts already, people that we knew within the catchment areas, but sometimes we didn't, so we just did a kind of standard way of sending out a flyer, contacting people, inviting people to events or just asking whether they'd be interested in us to come and talk about their land and what we could do to help and what they could do to help us. And so being able to do a one-to-one visit to look at the farm, walk around, engage with the farmer was absolutely critical for us to be able to identify the right sites.
After engaging with farmers and landowners and identifying NFM sites, we went about delivering those NFM measures. Here today we're at Chargate Estates where we've got 2 attenuation ponds with an intermediate silt trap. And the idea is to capture all the runoff from the field into the first attenuation pond, then capturing all the sediment within the silt trap and then into this much larger attenuation pond that we see here.
When we excavated, we were quite shocked. This area is all rock. The water drains into the rock, but also we've got a pipe in the pond that when it comes up, we just open up the valve and let the water out and let it down, and then when it's too low, bring it back up. It could be down a foot, 18 inches, and obviously dries up. The ponds come up, but then it's just gradually draining back down, ready for the next downfall. So this is what I'm saying, down the valley, it is a real control of the water, really good control. A lot more of it needs to be done, a lot more of it.
The river here has been constructed about 200 years ago with 2 weirs. One of those weirs had broken up and the other weir had been washed out. But what we ended up with was a dry river channel in the summer. We wanted to restore both a wildlife fish pass, but also to make it more aesthetically acceptable. We therefore rebuilt the weir that was damaged and we recreated the fish pass so that we have water flowing in both channels all year. I worked with the National Park and the Environment Agency for over 2 years on getting the permitting, and they introduced me to the Wild Trout Trust. They helped me redesign the notch here. We found the original notch from 200 years ago, and they introduced me to FWAG and said that FWAG might be able to help with financial contribution to the work, but also support and advice on the best things to do.
So one of the last aims of the project is to know if natural flood management is achieving those ambitions of slowing the flow, reducing the flood peak and improving our water quality. Now monitoring is a resource heavy and time consuming task, So we decided to only monitor one NFM technique, and that was the most popular NFM technique taken up by farmers, which was leaky woody dams. So here we've monitored these leaky woody dams, and from our monitoring we have shown that these dams hold back water and reduce the flood peak by 1.9%, which isn't huge. But these woody dams also show localised habitat improvement, like scour pools and outwash gravel bars. Although alone these dams won't solve our flooding issues, they do help when worked with other measures, and they also produce some lovely localised habitat improvements to channel diversity.
What we've been trying to do with the project is, rather than just doing some monitoring and gathering evidence and keeping it to ourselves, we've wanted to try and communicate that and disseminate that information to other projects, other people within the catchments, and just generally the kind of academic community as well. So what we've done a series of technical information sheets, and with those we've been able to send those to people about just things we've learnt simply about how to construct or how to maintain a leaky dam. We've also been able to learn from academic research that we've been involved with universities, and we've incorporated that in. So it's not just things that we've learnt, it's things that have had robust scientific evidence as well. We've been able to incorporate into those to provide that kind of evidence.
I'm a PhD student at Bristol University, looking at the effectiveness of natural flood management in Somerset. So as part of that I have a ring gauge installed, as well as my water level data that I'm looking at volumes from. As an example, in one storm in February, you can clearly see the peak volume at this upstream pond that happens at a certain time, but then the peak doesn't happen downstream for another 4 hours. Looking at the wider picture, this data will be really useful for the National Natural Flood Management Evidence Base, as there's a lot of uncertainty that currently, and there's quite a call for more empirical data looking at how these structures work and whether they're effective, how they fill and spill, how they store water, what they do essentially.
We've been able to present our results to the British Geomorphological Society in 2019 and also to the River Restoration Centre in 2020.
What we are seeing, the deer, they're coming here and drinking. The birds, a lot of birds here, a lot of insects. You look around the far side, you see all the grasses growing, a lot of vegetation, a lot of small wildlife in there, and that's what we're all heading for. We've got to help with this flow of water. We've got to slow things down and try and help all we can, and I'd like to do it all over the estate if we can get time to look at it, and it is obviously working,
I love it, as do other people, I have to say. They hear the water and they love it, and they love seeing the white water in the falls, even in flood conditions. We saw our first fish while we were still building it, coming upstream. So the wildlife side for me is the biggest aspect, without a doubt. We have a very wildlife-rich river. The other aspect that is important is it does help with flood control. By slightly reducing the crest height to the original height, the river level upstream has dropped slightly, and there hasn't been upstream flooding since.